beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings us, your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Clerk, we have quorum. Sergeant at Arms, kindly proceed to ring the bell for 5 minutes.
The Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi, has directed the Sergeant at Arms to ring the quorum bell, and this is to allow for extra 5 minutes for senators to make their way into the chamber this afternoon for the Senate to commence business. The institution of measures to curb incessant high electricity costs in Kenya is another motion before Senate this afternoon. And this particular motion is by the Senator for Marsabit County, Senator Mohamed Chute, that aware of energy is an essential factor of production and its total consumption is a major determinant of the performance of the economy with its cost and reliability spurring and stifling economic growth. There is an imbalance in the matter's demand and supply of power, coupled with payments by the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, and this is for the produced power not consumed, and matters fluctuation in the foreign exchange rates contributing to the high cost of electricity. Appreciating that Kenya has made strides in the diversifying its power sources with geothermal plants offering tremendous potential with zero carbon source power, already producing nearly 1 gigawatt of power. Standing Committee on Matters Energy, the Senate resolved that the committee undertakes an inquiry into the contract signed by independent power producers detailing the costs, capacity, and duration of the contractual agreements and their implications on affordability of electricity in the country. Also conduct an inquiry in matters discrepancy in the cost of electricity sold to Kenya Power by KenGen and imports from Ethiopia and the independent power producers. The Senate Committee on Energy is also set to undertake an inquiry on the diversion of the electricity generated by Lake Turkana wind power to the national grid, bypassing the inadequately supplied northern frontier counties of Marsabit and Samburu County. The Senate appears to have gained quorum this afternoon.
Please stop the bell. Clerk, first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Deputy Speaker, you are certainly out of order. Proceed, take your chair. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery today, we have 260 history and government students, accompanied by 9 teachers from Sagongo High School in Siaya County, who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Honorable Senators, I would also wish to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, a visiting delegation from the County Assembly of Makueni. The delegation is in the Senate on a 5-day benchmarking visit with the counterpart departments in the Senate. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. Joseph Nzioki, Deputy Chief of Sergeant at Arms. Clarice Komu, Senior Sergeant at Arms. Brian Mutua, Assistant Sergeant at Arms. Joseph Kimanthi, Assistant Sergeant at Arms. Joram Kaunga, Assistant Sergeant at Arms. Anthony Kingo, Assistant Sergeant at Arms. Dennis Kimeu, Assistant Sergeant at Arms. Clementine Muki, the Clerk Assistant. And lastly, James Singao, Research Officer. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit here at the Senate. Honorable Senators, I would also wish to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, a visiting delegation from the Georgetown University Edmund A. Welch School of Foreign Affairs, located in Washington, D.C. The delegation comprises 12 students, 2 university professors, and 1 delegation leader who are in the country on a learning tour and on a 1-day study tour in the Senate. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand up when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. Professor Lara Smith, Professor John Kramer, Waden Osman as a student, Yunji Kui as a student, Surya Gabriela Kopol Grabtri, that's a student. I hope I'm pronouncing these pretty foreign to me. Fiona O'Brien, student. Kate Mil Nojibadem, student. Robert Whitelaw. Andrew Erhill. Rory Dixon. Chloe Hammock. Nakita Guitu, Luis Villaquiz, Emily Langlois, Sami Davis Mochama, the delegation leader, and Peter Gishiri Njenga. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit. At this juncture, walk-in Senator, kindly walk in. At this juncture, I will allow the Senator from, where's the Senator from Makueni? Senator Enoch Wambua, on behalf of the Senator from Makueni County, you will proceed to welcome the delegation from Makueni, and thereafter, the majority leader, you will proceed to give welcoming remarks to welcome the delegation from Georgetown University, and after you are done, the minority leader will rise to give welcoming remarks to welcome the delegation from Sawagongo High School in Siaya. Oh, yes, but the minority leader will proceed to make the remarks, and the Senate of Siaya will also have an opportunity to welcome the guests. Let us proceed in that order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to stand in the gap for my brother, my neighbor, the Senator of Makueni, who will be walking in any time from now to welcome the delegation from Makueni and encourage them to spend their time well while they are here, to make sure that they learn the procedures of ensuring order in the assembly when they go back. I'm very sure under the guidance and tutelage of the office of the Sergeant at Arms in the Senate, they will get good information, they'll get good advice, they will go back home the better. And just to inform them, Mr. Speaker, through you, that where I am speaking from, this is exactly the same spot where your former Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. used to address the House from. He's now your governor. I suspect that there's something about this chair and senators and governors, but we'll leave that for another day. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. I also want to join Senator Wambua and the rest of my colleagues in welcoming all the visiting delegations to the Senate this afternoon, the students from Sawagongo in Siaya County, the delegation from Makueni County Assembly, and the students and their professors from Georgetown University in Washington. Mr. Speaker, it's one of the beauties of our democracy to be gathered here every afternoon at 2:30 and not necessarily agree, but at least have the chance to exchange ideas and try and reach to a consensus on many issues that are either a challenge or things that need the concerted wisdom of the people of Kenya. I believe that our visiting delegation, Mr. Speaker, will have the opportunity to listen in to a few of our debates or learn as they interact with the members of staff, senators in their committees in the course of their study, and get to appreciate the beauty of the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. I wish them well in their study tour. May they achieve all their objectives far and above, beyond what they expected when they set out to tour this Senate, Mr. Speaker. So on behalf of this House, the side that I lead, and Senate as a whole, I welcome and wish them well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to join you in welcoming the students from Sawagongo, officials of Makueni, and the delegation from, of students from the United States. I believe their visit to Kenya will open their eyes on how we operate here democratically, and this being the Senate, we set examples to the future leaders of this country. I hope the visit here will go a long way in ensuring that when you go back to your country, you will know how we procedurally do our things in the Senate. And for the young people of Sawagongo, I wish you well in your visit. I believe one day, as Baba has said it outside there, Baba Raila Amolo Odinga said, how many of you would like to be members of parliament or presidents of this country? You can be, your dreams can be achieved. And by that, you showed your hands when he said, who wants to be the president? And almost all of you said you want. So I believe you have a long journey to make yourself who you want to be. Your dreams are real. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Oburu.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to welcome the students from my county, Siaya, and Mr. Speaker, also to inform the House that this is a very, very strong school in academia, that in last year's KCSE exams, they were #1 in my county. So I take this opportunity to congratulate them for the performance, but also to encourage this group, which is also going to sit this year, to perform better than the ones of last year. Mr. Speaker, as I sit down, I would also like to inform the House that this is the second time this group of students are coming here to listen to us as Senate. But last time they came, Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of tension in the House, Mr. Speaker, and the security team could not allow them to come because of the situation. And Mr. Speaker, this is just because of a very small issue about the leadership on our side, which you are in a position to solve. Mr. Speaker, why don't you just do it so that we continue to work normally instead of having these constant failures? Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Senator Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you. I join you to welcome the students from Siaya County and also the students from Makueni County. Before I comment on the visiting delegation from the United States, the two counties produced two very prominent senators and also now governors. Mr. Speaker, the governor of Makueni, the former senator.
What is the point of order, Senator Cheptumo?
Mr. Speaker, did I hear my colleague talking about students from Makueni?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. You're right. The Sergeant at Arms, Polenimo, County Assembly, welcome to the Senate. Now, let me go back to my earlier thoughts now that the floor has been interrupted, but I'll try to see whether I can continue. The two counties had two very prominent senators who sat here. Senator for Siaya and now the governor of Siaya, the distinguished senator, His Excellency, the former minority leader, James Orengo, taught us quite a lot. He taught us to be able to learn, to respect one another. And I always remember one thing that he said. And if these students can be able to follow that, you'll probably make Kenya a much better place than we are making it. That government sometimes eats its own children. So I think if you go with that, you'll be able, revolution eats its own children. And if you go with that, I'm pretty sure you will be able to fight so that when you are the president, when you are the members of parliament seated here, you will be able to make good decisions in a more bipartisan way. For the visiting delegation from Makueni, the Senate is a good place to be able to learn how to deal with members of parliament, how to be able to accord them respect. And also, when you go back there, say hello to our good friend. We had a big fight in the last parliament for the revenue share, and he played a critical role for the amount of money that most counties are getting, given that his county was also losing. For the visiting delegation from the US, I'm very happy that you're here and you're students of foreign policy. When I was a student of political sciences, I was reminded that the American foreign policy goal is on three main things. One is security, the second one is prosperity, and the third one is the creation of a better world. I believe that when you traverse this continent of Africa, and now that you're here in Kenya, you'll be able to see the positions that we take, sometimes a little bit unorthodox, but is what we believe will make our country a much better place. I read yesterday on CNN that the government congratulated the leadership in Nigeria, but then the observers gave a different thing. That will all help in terms of your foreign policy understanding and what can be taken in and what cannot be taken in. I wish you all the best when you're visiting, and I hope that you will not stop in the Senate of the Republic of Kenya. I hope that you will visit the Masai Mara Game Reserve so we can get to spend some of your dollars there, because I represent the people of Narok County where we have the biggest and best game reserve. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
No. I was intervening before he sat down, he left the floor, because there is a very condemned message of fund devising give the students in the high school, which is not very clear, because it's a very condemned message. You know, students need an elect advice, either to become presidents or ministers or senators. But your message, Senator Ndama, was very condemned. I'm afraid the students understood what you said.
Senator Kathuri, as you've been told, these are not students from any other school, but a giant school. They are smart. They can decode whatever message you give them. Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Point of order, Senator Chirangi.
I don't know why the clerk is in order, quickly reading the orders. I had a rise to standing order number 1 and standing order number 231 on petitions. Mr. Speaker, on 15 February 2023, like slightly 20 days ago, a petition was brought on the situation of students that are in Finland from Kenya. Over the weekend, there was a report in media that a number of them are supposed to be deported over unpayment of school fees. Nandi is also doing the same. So, Mr. Speaker, I didn't have peace over the weekend. I had a number of parents, and they wanted to draft petition. Looking at that petition of, that was brought on 15 February on the issue of students that went to Finland and they are facing uncertainty and they are supposed to be deported. I know media has covered of Wasingishu County. I needed your guidance because it is the same program that is being run by county government of Nandi. So I thought, Mr. Speaker, you can provide guidance so that we don't need to bring another petition with similar issues, number one. Number two, Mr. Speaker, looking at the sensitive nature of that issue, where 19 students are facing possibility of deportation into the country, maybe you can direct that the Committee of Labor should provide progress report looking that out of 60 days, 20 days have been spent, therefore it means 40 days. So, Mr. Speaker, I understand the timeline, but looking at the sensitive nature of the issue, number one, and then number two, whether the progress report can be reported on that issue of Uasin County students that are in Lurea University in Finland, on the certainty of their status. If we can get progress report, it will mean, Mr. Speaker, upon your guidance and by standing order number 1, maybe either you can direct maybe by Thursday or next week, we get progress report so that I don't need to bring that matter again before the House, Mr. Speaker, so that this matter can be addressed once and for all, and our students in Finland or who intend to travel to any other part of the world, Australia, America, Germany, they can be certainty about that issue once and for all, Mr. Speaker, because many parents have had an option of using a lot of resources, selling land, fundraising, but when you have, and even the Finnish embassy here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, or Finland, or even Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has not reported on the status of those students. And the parents have not been sleeping, been receiving a lot of messages over the weekend. And you know, when media report these things, Mr. Speaker, it always there's a tangent that is picked up, Mr. Speaker. And yet the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Finnish embassy, have not reported. But what we are seeing, Mr. Speaker, is not very good. And Mr. Speaker, I really need your guidance as per standing order number 1, standing order number 234 on the public petition, so that we can assist, because you remember Uasin County Assembly has tabled a report, Mr. Speaker. They have given their findings on what should happen, Mr. Speaker. And then there is a National Assembly also handling the similar petition, Mr. Speaker. So it is important you guide the House, Mr. Speaker. And also the DCI and EACC have been sleeping in their job, because we are talking about an allegation of 684 million that has been sent on that process, but no one has been held account on that issue. So maybe you can guide us, Mr. Speaker, on that petition so that we can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you for that observation, Senator Chirangi. Indeed, it's a very weighty matter that need to be, and answers need to be provided. This petition has already been committed to the relevant standing committee, and I believe it's the Committee of Labor and Social Welfare. As the rules provide, there is that period within which they're supposed to retire, look into the matter, investigate the matter, and file their report. But due to the urgency of this matter, we will administratively expedite the finalization of the report so that we don't lose the momentum of this issue, which is extremely current and very important. It is what we will do is to administratively engage the committee so that they can be able to expedite and have the report, not to wait for the 60 days as given in the standing order. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
The chairperson. Once the majority leader lays the papers, the chairperson, Budget and Finance, will follow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay on the following papers on the table of this Senate today, the 7th of March 2023, being 1, the annual performance report for the Ministry of Defense for the financial year 2021-22. 2, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Nyeri for the year ended 30th June 2022. 3, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Nyeri, the County Executive of Kirinyaga for the year ended 30th of June 2022. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Assembly of Kirinyaga for the year ended 30th June 2022. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Murang'a for the year ended 30th of June 2022, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Assembly of Murang'a County for the year ended 30th June 2022, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Nyandarua for the year ended 30th of June 2022, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Assembly of Nyandarua for the year ended 30th of June 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, I lay the papers.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Finance and Budget.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Tuesday, the 7th of March 2023. Report of the joint sitting of Standing Committee on Finance and Budget of the Senate and the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning of the National Assembly on the nomination of Dr. Susan Chemtai Kwech for the appointment of the position of Deputy Governor of Central Bank. I beg to lay.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Finance and Budget.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to give notice of motion that the Senate adopts the report of the joint sitting of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget of the Senate and the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning of the National Assembly on the nomination of Dr. Susan Chemtai Kwech for the appointment to the position of Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of this Senate today, Tuesday, the 7th, 2023, and pursuant to Section 13B1 of Central Bank of Kenya Act and Section 8 of Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. Approves the nomination of Dr. Susan Chemtai Kwech for the appointment of the position of Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Kenya.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notice of motion that the doping menace threatening Kenya's impeccable global reputation in athletics. That aware that in 2018, Kenya was placed under Category A by the World Anti-Doping Agency, and since then, 40 Kenyan athletes have been banned by the 8 Athletics Integrity Unit, or the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAC, and has led to a situation whereby the Kenyan athletes have to undergo intense testing before participating in major events, and has immensely affected the reputation of the Kenyan athletes and the standing of Kenya in the international sports arena, where it currently ranks at number 5. Concerned that despite the high number of alleged doping cases, Kenya has only one World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, approved blood testing laboratory, forcing it to send urine tests to Qatar and South Africa for analysis, and that the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAC, is taking too long to address the doping menace, which is likely to affect the state of preparedness for the athletes in the upcoming 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts come up with modalities that can help achieve increased testing, intelligence gathering on athletes and doping awareness programs. B, in collaboration with Athletics Kenya, AK, and National Olympic Committee of Kenya, NOC, to vet all training camps, coaches, trainers, and other athletes, handlers. C, initiate investigations of Anti-Doping Agency Kenya, ADAC, to identify and sanction all responsible officers liable for the menace of doping in the country. D, Mr. Speaker, in collaboration with the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, DCI, and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, finalize pending investigations and recommend prosecution of individuals involved in giving banned substance to athletes. And finally, Mr. Speaker, E, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, to identify and revoke license for medics, pharmacies, and hospitals responsible for the prescription of the commonly abused drugs by the athletes in Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Senator Veronica Maina. That statement is deferred. Senator Crystal Asige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on KRA's move to suspend tax refunds, exemptions, waivers, and abandonments with immediate effect, and no immediate clarity as to the scope of those affected and to what extent. In the statement, the committee should state the scope within which the directive to suspend tax refunds, exemptions, waivers, and abandonments covers, giving the timelines within which this exercise will be undertaken. Disclose the amounts disbursed to persons with disabilities from the granted tax reliefs and incentives of 610 billion in the last 5 years, stating the particulars of the beneficiaries. Clarify the affected parties, stating whether the tax reliefs are due to PWDs are affected. Find out the number of PWDs employed in Kenya, stating the number of tax exemptions certificates from KRA awarded to these employees. State the criteria used in deciding the class of taxpayers affected, clarifying the objective and the goal of the exercise. State whether the relevant stakeholders were engaged, tabling evidence of the same. And finally, Mr. Speaker, state immediate targeted interventions, if any, available for persons with disabilities affected by the ambiguity of this directive. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I want to congratulate Senator Crystal Asike for this statement. I think, Mr. Speaker, this is a very timely statement, noting that a few days ago, Kenya Revenue Authority is ongoing reforms. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the Constitution is very clear, and I agree with that with one thing, that tax relief, of course, should be and must be provided for the vulnerable, that's the PWDs, marginalized and minority, as per the law. Mr. Speaker, this issue of tax reliefs and exemption was being misused and abused. As you are aware, in the last financial year, there were allegations that 370 billion of tax exemption was issued by KRA, Mr. Speaker, and around 672 billion could not be accounted for during the tenure. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious issue. It goes beyond even this statement that some individuals within KRA must face full force of the law, because this issue of tax relief was a noble idea, but it was misused along the way, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, looking even at our budget, Mr. Speaker, you have heard from the budget policy statement and even the chair of budget in the National Assembly indicate that we might end up borrowing 860 billion to finance our budget, which is deficit, Mr. Speaker. It is because this issue of tax relief, tax exemptions, tax evasion are being misused and abused by individuals who don't want to pay taxes, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it forces our budget to go on tax deficit, Mr. Speaker. If everybody can pay tax, Mr. Speaker, in this country, as the President William Ruto has said, then, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to fund activities, including even our children, our students from Sawagonga High School. We can be able, the money that is meant for junior secondary school, that is meant for the tuition capitation in Sawagongo Secondary School and other schools in Nandi and beyond the country, Mr. Speaker, can be paid. So the issue in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, is I agree that let the tax relief be given, but to only Kenyans that are vulnerable situation. And then, Mr. Speaker, KRA must and should be accountable and follow the law when they are issuing on the tax relief. And finally, Mr. Speaker, because I know there are changes, and even the KRA chairperson, is it chairperson or the head of KRA, the former Mr. Mburu and other commissioners were interdicted, Mr. Speaker. Others were fired, Mr. Speaker. They must fail full force of the law, Mr. Speaker. And out of curiosity, Mr. Speaker, because I know we'll attend during the vetting, Mr. Speaker, you have been a governor, and I know a number of your colleagues who you served in governorship position for the last 10 years. Out of curiosity, I have never understood why KRA would penalize a county for not remitting statutory deductions and payments, payee, yet they are aware that there is a delayed disbursement from the National Treasury. So, Mr. Speaker, these are also KRA sometimes becomes something that prevents devolution from being efficient, because KRA knows that National Treasury has not released funds to counties. Yet they go ahead and penalize your county, like, for example, when you are governor in Kilifi, or our brother Jackson Mandago when he was in Wasingishu, or Senator Roba when he was in governor, Mr. Speaker. Why would KRA go and penalize a government agency, yet they can get that information and be able to sort out among other agencies, not only county governments, but other agencies?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Senator Crystal for bringing this motion, because we know that there are people who have been abusing these tax exemptions, people who are not people with disability. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge that KRA does not punish those people with disability because we have rogue people who are actually do not have any disabilities. When we were in Mombasa with the Committee of National Cohesion, and we had a couple of discussions around just the bureaucracy that was there for the people with disability to get their tax exemptions, to even get their IDs. And there was a lot of issues that were actually impacting that the government is able to give proper services to people with disability. But the issue that I could tell in every situation was that we have Kenyans who want to take advantage of this tax exemption, or who want to take advantage of the, let's say, the services that government is giving to people with disability. So they claim and they get fake IDs to claim that they have disabilities so that they can actually be able to access KRA tax exemptions. But, Mr. Speaker, having said that, I think it is not proper to punish this constituency of people just because we have rogue people. But instead, perhaps KRA can work with us. We can give them lists of people who are actually trying to, you know, con the government out of not paying taxes by using the people with disability as a constituency that they belong in. And I think, going forward, Mr. Speaker, as Senator Asige keeps on highlighting us on certain issues that we are actually not aware, I think it is time also for us who are able to push this agenda to be able to empathize with what the people with disability are going through, Mr. Speaker. Just access to basic services is so difficult that when government decides that they're giving them tax exemptions, it's not because they cannot pay taxes, but it's to ensure that we ease certain situations where people with disability need that extra push. So, Mr. Speaker, I support Senator Asige's statement, and I call upon KRA not to crack the whip and punish the innocent.
and changing global circumstances. And 4, state measures, if any, to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the tax regime in supporting climate change programs, detailing how the information will be used to inform the future policy decisions. Senator Hamida Kibwana. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Okeyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to comment on the statement on the state of nut industry in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I'm very aware that agriculture was one of our priorities as we campaigned in trying to make it favorable for the people, and in this case, I want to highlight the women and young people. The nut industry as it is, especially from your county, Mr. Speaker, Kilifi, the cashew nut farming in that area is largely concerned because it involves women and young people. Most of the women have been affected because they're the ones who are involved in sorting, and the young people are the highest producer of nuts in the region. And Kenya, as we work closely to meet them in that position, we also need to give consideration to the people who are involved in this sorting and picking of the nuts. People largely relied on the nut as a source of income. We have women who thought migrating from the different areas they were in was going to make their lives better. Unfortunately, they are now not even able to support themselves. The factories in those places are not offering competitive prices, or if at all they are being paid, they are being paid very meager salaries, which cannot even support their children to go to school. We are also encouraging young people to engage in agriculture, but if the agriculture sector is dominated by such kind of effects we are seeing, then it will definitely push young people away from agriculture. So I surely want to support the concerns raised by Senator Hamida in this statement, but also encourage that we look at the people who are involved in this sector away, not just concentrating on the companies that are competing in this, because we have had very many adverse effects on those people who are in this nut industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mundigi.
Bwana Spika, makandamia katika Embu, jimbo ndogo la Manyata, jimbo ndogo la Runyenje, makandamia ni mingi, watu wengi wanapanda nyingi sana kwa sababu ni kama ndio tunapata hela nyingi. Kwa hiyo mimi naunga mkono tuangalie vile kutafanywa ndio mkulima aweze kuwa akifaidika, kwa sababu katika mboma saa hii bei ni ya chini sana, na wakati watu kutoka nje walikuwa nunua samani ilikuwa toka kama kilo moja shilingi 100 na kitu, lakini sasa unakuta mkulima analima lakini anauza kama shilingi 30, ananunua shilingi 40. Kwa hiyo sasa kama kuna uwezekano ni wale watu walikuwa nunua samani bila kuangalia mambo ya wale watu wako Kenya. Kuna matajiri wako Kenya walitoa pesa nyingi, na ikawa sasa mkulima kutoka nje, mtu wa kutoka nje hawezi kupata nafasi ya kuja kununua, sasa ikawa na shida. Kwa hiyo sasa mimi naunga mkono kama hiyo mambo inaweza kuondolewa, ndio iwe soko uhuru, kila mtu aweze kulima na auze vile anataka, na pia watu wa kutoka nje wakumbaliwe kukuja Kenya kununua hizo vitu. Kwa hivyo naunga mkono. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Kenywa.
Asante Bwana Spika. Ni vizuri ukweli usemwe, kwa sababu ukiangalia kama vile kulingana hiyo taarifa kuhusu karanga, unapata ya kwamba si karanga peke yake Bwana Spika, lakini ukiangalia mazao yote hapa nchini Kenya, ukulima hujatutilia maanani inavyofaa. Sisi tunaongea kuhusu mazao ya biashara peke yake, mfano kitu kama pareto na mazao yale mengine, lakini mazao ambayo yanaweza kutumika hapa nyumbani hatujatilia mkazo. kitu ambacho tunaongea sana, utasikia tukisema kuhusu mpunga, utasikia tukisema kuhusu mahindi, lakini mimea ile mingine kama vile karanga, korosho, Bwana Spika, hata viazi ukitembea Nyandarua unapata hii hatuitilii maanani kama serikali. Kwa hivyo tunapaswa kuitilia maanani kwa sababu itatusaidia na sisi kama Kenya Kwanza, kwa sababu tumesema ni mpaka tulete chakula kiwe ni kitu ambacho hakitakosa, na itawezekana tu ikiwa tutatilia maanani kitu inaitwa ukulima, Bwana Spika. Vile vile, Bwana Spika, kulingana na taarifa ile nyingine iliyotajwa, kulisemekana ya kwamba mazingira yetu tayari imeharibika sana, lakini kwa semekana ya kwamba ni mpaka kutafutwe njia mbadala ya kuweza kulinda mazingira yetu. Bwana Spika, ukitembea kama juzi tu iko taarifa iliyokuwa imeletwa katika jumba hili kuhusu miti ya mimbuyu ambayo watu wanakata, lakini wanapokata wanaambiwa kwamba waangalie mazingira. Lakini Bwana Spika, hata ijapokuwa utaambia hawa watu waangalie mazingira, ni mpaka waambie baada ya kuchunga hii miti watasaidika vipi, na wanategemea ile miti wakikata wanaweza kupata afueni kwa sababu wanalipwa pesa wakikata ile miti. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, vile ambavyo tunapaswa kuwa tukifanya kamati ambazo zitakayopelekewa hizi taarifa, waangalie mambo haya kwa kindani ndio tuweze kupata suluhu la kudumu. Tusiwe tu Bwana Spika ni kuja katika jumba hili tunaongea alafu hatufanyi chochote tu, jambo letu tunakuwa ni kuongea. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, ni ukulima wote tuweke mkazo, na tukiwekea mkazo Bwana Spika itakuwa inasaidia kizao hiki tulichonacho na kizazi kijacho Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo tusiwe tu ni watu wa kuongea bila tukija hapa tukipatia katika kamati inakuwa ni jambo limeongewa, mwaka ujao tunaongea jambo hilo. Bwana Spika, naomba ya kwamba kamati zitakazopewa zishughulikie kwa undani na waweze kuleta suluhu la kudumu Bwana Spika. Asante.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think agriculture is actually our mainstay and the driver of our economy. However, for a long time it has been neglected, and all the focus has gone to cash crops like coffee and tea, and food crops like maize only. However, this country has a diversity of food production and products of like cashew nuts, livestock, herds and skins. These things like small-scale farmers that produce diversity of food, like potatoes and all these things have actually not been given much attention. And therefore, I think that's actually why not to be able to, to meet our economy to grow. And as you are aware, this country, 75% of the country is actually arid, the same arid. And every region has its own products produced. Like, cashew nut has been produced in Clivy and those coastlines. Farmers like livestock, they keep in the asset areas. But however, the focus has already been neglected. And I think it's a high time that we need to grow and go back to the drawing board so that at least for us to grow our economy, we need to have, in the past, there has been a lot of diversification in crop production. And the focus was not only on cash crop, but the food crop was being promoted, and other supplementary crops like cashew nuts and other food products and other cash crops was improved, like pyrethrum and all these things. However, of late, the whole focus now has gone only on the maize production, the tea and coffee, and I think this is not actually sustainable for this country economy. This is actually a middle level economic country. We need to go to diversify and to increase our source of revenue, and especially and also production of other cash crops and food crops, so that even sorghum can be grown anywhere. Today, as you are aware, this country actually is having a food scarcity and that's famine. But of course, anytime we talk about food, we only talk about maize and rice and beans. Well, we can be able to feed our people with the other nuts, the potatoes, and all these things. Something like the korosho, or what you call cashew nuts. It's a very nutritious product that can be even used for malnourished kids and mothers. Therefore, it's the high time I think we need to go back to our drawing board, the drawing board, so that we can be able to enhance and finance other crops and other production systems in different parts of this country. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Senator Alan Chesang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this statement of cashew nuts. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have been trading, actually I've been buying cashew nuts from Tanzania and selling to international investors before. And I know how much, I know the price of cashew nuts, and I know how much revenue it can bring to our country. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we support this kind of, if you support our farmers to plant this kind of crops, it's going to change, it's going to bring revenue in our country. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, sir, 1 ton of cashew nuts in Tanzania is $4,600 as we speak. If the government will take this seriously, I'm sure even a ton of maize is not up to 4,600 US. So the kind of revenue it can bring to this country, if taken seriously, I'm sure it will support our farmers and support other crops as well. We have other crops like sunflower, and sunflower oil is very expensive and it's on high demand internationally, and it is something that the government should support. I also want to make a comment, Mr. Speaker, on the issuing of free sanitary towels. I support this motion.
Senator Chesang, you may not venture into those waters.
Okay.
We are yet to get to that business.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chute.
Shukrani sana, Bwana Spika. Nimeshangaa sana kusikia Senator Mundigi akisema korosho ilikuwa inanunuliwa na zaidi ya shilingi 100, na leo, Bwana Spika, nimeshangaa sana kusikia inanunuliwa na shilingi 30 peke yake. Bwana Spika, Kenya Kwanza manifesto inasema itasaidia ukulima na imeongelea sana juu ya ukulima. Saa hizi shida iko kwa Kenya. Mimi nimetoka boda, kaunti yangu ni boda ya Ethiopia. Ukulima Kenya imekwisha, ikakufa na ikazikwa, Bwana Spika. Saa hizi watu wako Kenya kutoka Marsabit kwenda Moyale wanapata chakula kutoka Ethiopia. Boda inaitwa Moyale. Bwana Spika, unga ya ngano ni bei nusu na bei ya Ethiopia leo. Unga ya mahindi hivyo hivyo.